I think by design, laws really don't come into play with the social justice. That's more for legislators and politicians. Laws are meant to be black and white, meaning you can read them or see them in case law and apply them to the facts of each case that comes in the door, at least for personal injury. But there's not a lot of room for social justice because the jury ultimately is the decider of questions of fact and the judge is the decider of questions of law. So as long as it meets the criteria of the law, it gets to the jury and you get to have 12 people come to a unanimous decision about your injuries, and that's about the only social justice you get is those 12 people listening or not listening to the facts of your case and applying the law to it. So luckily, social justice is meant more for the legislators and politicians.
I would say I don't believe the law is set up for social justice. I believe the law is set up for justice. Justice for all people. Justice for whatever the situation is that arises. People go to the courts to get justice. And it's our job to help our client to get justice. Represent them to the best of our ability to get that justice. And in order to get the justice, you got to get it from the judge and you got to get it from those 12 people sitting on the jury. And they're the ones who hash out the justice. And you have to convince them of your position, the strength of your position, because you're going to have somebody on the other side trying to try to prove to them the opposite. You know, it's going to be fighting you. It's kind of like a football game. You you prepare, instead of preparing for a week, you prepare for a year. And then to go to play the game, and you play the game in the courthouse and in front of that jury, and then you get a decision and you try to anticipate what they're going to do, and at the same time you try to plan what your offense is going to be and how you're going to respond and play defense to what they're saying. That's really what I like about being a lawyer and a trial lawyer. It's competitive.
But social justice does come in when the jury doesn't listen to the judge on the law and they get back in the deliberation room, come up with their own law, because they are out there in the public, and even though they are told to disregard anything outside knowledge and listen to what the judges charge them with the law and how to apply that to the facts, when they get back in that deliberation room, they may apply social justice and not at all listen to the judge. And that's what I warn every client about is we got to convince all 12. The defense only has to convince one. And that's a hard thing to do. So social justice does come into play. It shouldn't, but the reality is it does.
See, what you said makes me think of this. In every personal injury case, when you go into court, it's against the rules to bring up insurance, like health insurance, car insurance. In a wreck case, you can't mention insurance. Although you got 12 people sitting on that jury that all have insurance on their cars. Many of them have health insurance, and so when they're evaluating somebody's damages, they start bringing in their understanding of insurance. For example, this guy has $10,000 worth of medical bills, and then there'll be somebody on the jury, they'll be thinking, well, if health insurance paid it, he really only had $3,000 or $4,000. But the system is designed for insurance not to come into play. And the reason it doesn't come into play is because you don't realize that whatever that fella gets out of his jury award, he's going to have to pay that insurance company back out of those proceeds that did pay for his medical bills. So if you sit there and you try to read in what you're not supposed to read into it and what the judge tells you not to read into it, you end up getting a verdict that's bad for the people because you incorporated facts that weren't part of the claim.
And speaking of social justice and the recent shooting of the United Healthcare CEO and how on the bullet casings were written, deny, delay, depose. I always say deny, delay, defend, because that's the whole mantra of the insurance, or our opponent on the other side, whether it's workers' comp or personal injury, is to deny it. No, it wasn't our guy's fault. If it was our fault, we didn't cause all your injuries. They were pre-existing. We may have slightly exacerbated them, but it wasn't at all our fault. We shouldn't be responsible for all these medical bills. Then they delay it. Well, they know eventually they're sitting on their money the whole time. They're making interest on the money the whole time. They don't really part with their money until they pay the settlement or the verdict, and then they defend it, making us file a lawsuit. That drags it out for another 12 to 18 months. Deny, delay, defend. That's what they're known for, because they can make the interest on their money while they sit on it. At the same time, your client's starving out. Psychologically, mentally, they're wanting to give up, take less on their case because they're just willing to have it over. They just want it to be done with. And that is all by design, a sad, sadistic design. But that's what we're here to also help them and coach them through. Is that's part of the system. Understand the game. If you understand the game, you can play by the rules of the game. You understand who your opponent is in the game, and you can whip their ass in the game and beat them. You can go after them and win the game. You just got to know who your opponent is, what the rules are of the game. Let's play.
From an insurance company standpoint, if you have a claim, or you have 10 claims, and your strategy is, I'm going to deny all 10, and they deny them. How many people quit after that initial denial? Let's say 5 of them do. All right, then they've wiped off the board 5 of those 10 claims. Then those other 5 people say, well, I'm going to fight it for a little while. Then they get in there and fight it, get a lawyer and fight it, and do exactly what Trey said. But some of them are going to sell out because they're broke. They can't afford it. They settle cheap. So then you say there's 3 out of those remaining 5 settle cheap. I know, and you may have 2 out of 10 that'll go the distance. So who wins in that situation? Who makes the money? The insurance company makes the money. Rather than having to fight 10 claims, they fight really 2.5 with these other people that settle for next to nothing just because they're destitute.
A big box store taught me that my first year in practicing with you, Ernie. It's called a cost benefits analysis. They denied everybody that got hurt in their store because 9 out of 10 people will go away. And you don't have to pay them if they go away. And if they don't go away, they're going to go get an attorney. Well, those 10% that went and got an attorney are still cheaper than the 90% they scared away.
Exactly.